I had people calling from the US at the beginning when I was alone in the office. They called me and I pick up and say, yeah, by the way, I am Seven Friday. So they were telling, yeah, but they got the message. So what he tells me is that, like, that's how I live. Because normally the first people picking up on the brand were artists and designers, because they have this certain sensibility, right, to understand what we want to express, and then the rest hopefully follows.
But Dan, how did you get into this in general? Like, how did you get into watches?
Into watches, yeah, good question. Because people think when you're Swiss, when you're in the watch industry, that's what you're born into. Something is either into finance, what else? We have chocolate, cheese, and watches, right?
Sure.
So that's our limitation, what you can do in Switzerland.
Banking.
Yeah, but finance, banking, we have Mohammed.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I was I studied law. And in the middle, I had an internship in Czech Republic in a Canadian law firm, to get some practice. And I realized never in my life I'm going to be a lawyer. But when you're in the middle, changing, you lose a lot of years. So I finished, I did my master in law, and then immediately went into IT, because that I find way more fascinating. Because the problem for me, and probably a lot of lawyers would dispute that, is law is like risk assessment. So your lawyer always tells you shouldn't do this, be careful here. Yeah, it's always. And I like more creating opportunities, which for me is a bit the opposite. And IT I just always saw as something extremely innovative. So I worked at that time for compact computers.
But how did you switch from law to IT? You took a degree in law.
I took a degree in law.
And you applied for a job in
in IT, as a special. No, in finance actually. It was because I thought finance is something I should know a little bit about. But you have a lot of, even for medical profession, engineers who work in general economics and not specifically in their field. Like my dad, he's a mechanical engineer, never built a machine that works. So he was actually also in the luxury industry for a short period. He was with Belly. But yeah, so the speed of IT always fascinated me. And when you have a laptop comes out, and 3 months later you have to depreciate, because already there's a new process coming out. So the speed of stock devaluation is just insane. And then you come in the watch industry and say, you're basically just sitting on your stock and you're becoming rich on paper. I don't even know how it is exactly these days, but at that days it was like 15% year on year price increase.
Mm. Overall in general, but what year are you talking about now?
That was 2000 to 2010.
Oh, so they would do 15%?
Yeah, in average, depends which brand.
On average, yeah.
But there was quite an increase.
Like 5, 7, 8, I remember that.
So theoretically on paper, you're making money by just not selling.
Increasing, yeah. So you just inflate your
cash flow sucks a bit, but and actually at that time I met my wife, and we got engaged, and I told her that I want to travel. I want to see the world, and not just travel for holidays. I want to live in different parts of the world, because Switzerland is so small. And I got a bit tired. The biggest city in Switzerland is Zurich, with 450,000 people. It's like a village you can walk through. And it tends to lead to the fact that you know most people, a lot of people. So at that time, my fiance was like, yeah, sure, no problem. The pink glasses. And I got a job offer from a Swiss trading house to manage a subsidiary in Australia. So you can't go any further, really. I think my in-laws didn't like me very much at that time. And because our daughter was just born, so I worked at Compaq, we got married. Faye, who now works at Seven Friday, actually, was born. And when she was 6 months old, we packed and we moved to Australia for me to become country manager of this trading house, who happened to distribute luxury goods. And luxury goods were at this time Automobile, Jaguar Culture, Porsche Design, Eterna, Maurice Lacroix. Including Porsche Design accessory, but it was more like,
And what year we're talking now?
2001.
2001, beginning.
Yeah, just after the Olympics. There were the Olympics in Sydney in 2000. And 2001, we moved there. And it was crazy, because I was in the plane. I said, oh, God, I'm really stupid. So I go to Australia. I've never been. I take a job, I meet my team tomorrow, and I've never sold a watch in my life.
And the job itself was what was your job description?
Country manager.
Country manager.
So I had 5 brands to manage for the country, distribution.
Ah.
So we were distribution company.
Yeah.
Australia.
What was your knowledge? Because a lot of people think if you're Swiss, you just know everyone.
You have it in the
brand.
blood. Yeah, it's like the cheese.
Yeah.
And the job.
So did you have knowledge, background on watches? Did
No,
you
absolutely
care?
not. I did receive for my diploma, so you have a diploma and then master. I did receive, that's tradition in the family, I did receive a watch, which happened to be an Omega, I don't even know, Seamaster. But it was gold, and I don't like gold. So I was never wearing it. I think it's pretty much new. It's still in my safe at home. So mostly I was wearing G-Shock, actually.
Okay.
And Swatch.
Japanese, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Swatch, okay.
No, it wasn't really so much on my radar. I did, actually, where we lived in the middle of Zurich, there was a store just around the corner, watch store. So one day I went to check out a bit, and it's a cool accessory. For me, it was more that. Didn't have any clue about mechanics or whatever. And I went and I saw this IWC, and I said, that's actually really cool. And then I checked the price. I think it was 250,000. So
It's not cool anymore.
well, it's still cool, but expensive cool. And so I went, I did 3 months in Zurich in the head office, and I got to visit the factories. I spent 1 week at Audemars Piguet in Le Brassus, in Le Sentier with Culture 1 week. And so I did learn a bit. I got a bit into, I visited the factories for a lifetime, and then off to Australia.
And how was it there? Do you still remember the difficulties, or how did you adapt to the life there? It's very different, I think, too.
Yeah, everything is very different. I think it sometimes helped that certain opportunities, I think I just jump on it. Because if I think it through and rationalize it like a lawyer, I would never do it. Same for Seven Friday then later. But I thought, well, if they're stupid enough to hire me, I'm stupid enough to go. And I wanted to see the world. No, I'm serious. I wanted to go out, and you need to grab this opportunity when they come. Because if you always wait for a better one, for a different one, you're never going to do it. And that led to a lot more things. And when I arrived in Australia, yes, I was extremely nervous, but I was mostly nervous to meet the team. So I arrived from Singapore, and the next day, I think on a Sunday or Saturday, and then on Monday, I met the team. And for me, the biggest nervosity or fear was really that I managed to convince the team that I can be a leader, that I can be an added value to them, and not just an obstacle being sent from Switzerland.
Okay. And mostly the team are like native Australians, they're not.
They were Australians, all of them. Yeah.
So it wasn't like
couldn't
a Swiss
understand
team.
them. You know, the Australian accent can be
I
brutal.
know,
Yeah, no, they were nice, and so yes, there were 2 sales managers, there were 2 marketing, there was a whole service center. There was a Swiss guy in the service center, and my predecessor wasn't there for 2 weeks. But it's the best thing is you just jump in, and you go out and you go on the road. You don't hide yourself in the office. Yeah.
But we're talking early 2000. But these are big brands now. Like, how was AP in early 2000 compared to today?
AP was already quite substantial. Not like now, but was really very serious, especially in Asia. Actually, we did everything in Asia, our group, except Southeast Asia. So also China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan.
Oh, okay.
And Australia was, honestly, in the whole group was tinier.
Yeah.
It's not a very strong
So it's
watch
the same
market.
company that overlooks all of these countries?
Yes.
So the Hourglass? Did you work for the Hourglass?
No,
or
Hourglass is retailer.
Oh,
They
so
also do a bit wholesale. No, it was
okay.
Tesco Funchal Test, doesn't exist anymore. They got then sold to another Swiss trading house. So no, it was traditionally there's quite a few Swiss and German trading houses. They went a long time ago, 150 years ago, they went to Asia for trade, silk trade and such things.
Okay.
Some opium trades, but they would never admit that. You know, like Hong Kong is built. Have you read?
No,
James,
but I heard that, yeah.
What is it? James Clavell. It's really fascinating story about
how they built Hong Kong on a bit.
exactly on drugs. No,
But because you mentioned Maurice Lacroix,
yes,
and if you go to the history of Maurice Lacroix, this is how they started into watches, because they used to trade silk.
well, that Maurice Lacroix was built by the company I worked for. So Desk of
Exactly.
Funchal
Okay,
was exactly. So it used to be an OEM company,
Yeah.
and then they said, well, let's do a brand.
Actually, we had the CEO of Mustakla
Stefan.
Stefan, exactly.
Yeah,
a few
I know him.
months ago here.
Yeah.
And that's exactly he said. They were into silk, and they would go to whatever China, and they'd say, "Oh, you're Swiss. Maybe you can sell us watches." And they went back to Switzerland, did whatever they wanted,
Yeah.
and then they started Mustakla. And so you worked for the same.
Yeah. I know Stefan.
Not Stefan. I mean the original.
Yeah. No. I worked.
OG
Yeah, but I know
company
him from that time
Yeah.
because he's already there quite a while. At that time, he wasn't CEO, and we distributed still in Asia. So I was with the group till 2008, then we got sold to DKSH, and then till 2010, and then I left. So basically from Australia, so I was only 1.5 years in Australia. I was so excited that we got a house that I chose without my wife. So it was the wrong side of the city. It was super boring. But before we could change, they asked me to go because we lost Czech culture. That was at that time it was sold to Richemont.
Okay.
And they obviously then incorporated everything in the offices. So I did the handover of the Australian business to Richemont. And it was a substantial business of Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, where we also had offices at that time. They asked me to go to Singapore and rebuild the business for Southeast Asia and still manage Australia. So at that point, then we got Breitling in, which was good. Perfect brand for Australia, really. We got some new ones like Graham, Arnold and Son. We developed and installed the first, at that time, Graham and Arnold Son used to be together, right? And we did the first boutique in Malaysia in Star Hill. We even designed it.
But what's interesting about what you say is that, and the reason I asked about AP back then and now is that throughout the years, it's really interesting to me is that how brands get big and then they slow down and they get big. And to you, you're from the inside.
Well, inside, yeah, but I think generally I think they had a very steady growth, and in the recent year, very aggressive growth. But yes, I think in general, most brands, I would say, there's always, especially when it's a hype, there has to be a calm down phase. There's always certain trends also in the markets, and you can't always get everything right, I believe. And it's always a discussion as well. How cool can big brands be? So it's just besides, but you know what I mean? It's like because it becomes then somehow mainstream, yes, they want to try to do it with limited and accessibility, which is also a two-sided sword, right? But
It is two-sided because well, we talk about everything on this podcast, but in my humble opinion is that AP tried to be very cool and they lost the true enthusiast. Now if you go to Marvel and the editions and Francois, what he did in the US and pop culture and music, he tried really hard to be that cool. And they got into offshores and colorful and big Royal Oaks or whatever. Marvel at the end.
But that really drove them quite a bit of growth.
But he made it 10 billion or something, right? I think they got
no 2. I think they're now 2 billion.
2 billion. 2 billion business,
I think something like that. But I remember when they were 300 million. So that's quite substantial, and I think.
But as you said, there's 2. But they definitely lost the very few niche market of like true connoisseurs that likes the simple perpetuals and thin watches and not very flashy. That was my point. But so what you're telling me is that you weren't into watches, Swiss guy, not into watches, went to Australia and then managed a lot of brands in Australia, Southeast Asia, and these places.
Japan.
And also Japan.
Lived 3 years in Japan. Yeah, because then Southeast Asia, we rebuilt, so everything was okay. And the problem is when everything is too easy, I get bored. And then they asked me to go to Japan. That was a challenge.
Was hard?
Yeah. No, it was like, I think about 150 people, 3 offices, and they were in big trouble. So yeah, they took a lot of. I never forget.
Same brands.
Parmigiani we had there as well. Graham we had already there. Then Mobus jewelry. And then parallel, I had some brands I had to do all Asia. So it was a lot of traveling. It was very intensive period, very, very interesting. Oh, there was also, it just reminds me, you talked about Bigger, when there was a period they had special collections for Japan. And it was a big discussion to finally globalize the collection, where in the market, people always, the so-called specialists said, the locals said, no, this is different here. You have to listen to us. We do the products. So the market would drive the products. And it was a big fight also for Big at that time to globalize and have the same products, which obviously ultimately really worked. And it's what the consumer also wants in these days of visibility and transparency, right?
Was it based on the Royal Oak, or was it completely different model?
It was based on Royal Oak, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was already then was the big one, but they had these titanium and quartz watches and
smaller sizes,
smaller
maybe.
size, yeah.
And how did Seven Friday get into all of this?
Into all of this,
What was the?
So 10 years to get the angle in. 10 years I traveled around with the family. My son was born in Singapore. At one stage, the family was a bit tired of keep moving houses, changing friends. And they wanted to go back to Switzerland. And I thought, it's about time, because we just got bought over. We moved to Thailand, but it wasn't the same, because I had a lot of freedom at the first employer. So if the numbers were right, I could
do whatever,
And it changed the metric structure, big company, 20,000 people. And I just realized that's not really what I'm after. There's nothing wrong with it. Certain people like that, and certain people like a bit smaller. And I decided that's the right moment. I looked a bit into possibilities. And I ended up buying half of a design studio in Switzerland in the watch industry.
So you ended up founding or buying, you said? Buying a design studio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I invested in designing so there was an existing one. Okay. Like there are quite a few. In Vienna, actually, and invested there to build a platform upon which I can build a brand. So that was the idea. And so in 2010, we moved back. And I... Actually, because I live in Zurich, so that's like a 1.5 hour drive. So I went for nearly 2 years forward and back.
To Vienna, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vienna,
And based on that, actually, the designer in the lead of this project is now also a partner in the company and is still with the brand. So since the beginning, since the first sketch, it's the same designer doing all the products and the evolution. And which is dangerous and important, because you want to keep, or for me, it's important that we keep a very clear DNA in terms of design language, but it can also lead that maybe there's not enough variation or experimental directions. So we always have to be careful about that.
Sorry, can you explain to someone so what is a design studio for watches? So like who are the clients? So Maurice Lacroix would come to you guys and we're working on a project, AP, Patek, whoever, right? So they outsource their design services? I mean, they outsource the design?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of brands outsource. But for example, the big ones, often they have the in-house teams, but they use outside design studios to challenge a bit the ideas. Exactly to find a bit new avenues possible to investigate. But there's also brands, they in a certain percentage or even everything they outsource in terms of design. They give specific briefing, they're in control, they still know. Very often they have the same designer they use for many projects. So establish a certain... But it's a smart move. Doesn't mean you have to do everything in-house to be good.
And that's something very... I want to talk about the in-house idea.
Yeah.
Because to me also, and we discussed this a little bit, Seven Friday was maybe I don't know, and you just mentioned Max mentioning that it was the first idea of like you mentioned, or the case back, I still remember, still to this.
Yeah, we still do.
Is that it's not everything is in-house and everything is in Switzerland,
I think, yeah.
What was the idea? Okay, sorry, I jumped a little
bit.
No. So you got the studio. And then what was the idea to start Seven Fridays? And what's the meaning of the name?
We were 3 partners starting that. One was the designer, then the other owner of the design studio, myself. And we had a lot of discussions. And one is obviously the design of the product. What do we want? And I think what was very important to figure out what we don't want. So what was clear from the beginning is we want to build a brand. That's where opportunism, it's really sometimes very annoying. Because things you could sell, you don't do. because it would sacrifice the identity and maybe the midterm objective for the branding. So that was one thing. That means we looked at and said, okay, we all know the most sold shape in the watch industry is round. Simple. So let's not do round watch. So we wanted to work with visual complications because it's fun to have a chronograph. How often do you use the function? Never. It's easier quickly on the phone, right? So all these functions, but okay, if it doesn't matter, but a lot of people pay for a function they don't use because it looks sporty. They like the look of it. It's more visual thing. So that at least was our reading. So we said, okay, we focus on visual complication to give a high perceived value for a price point that's considerably accessible. Because at that point of time, at a price range of 1,000 Swiss franc, there was not so much creativity. Right? There was kind of a vacuum in there. Next discussion was Swiss-made, non-Swiss-made. And I'm Swiss-made, so I have nothing against Switzerland. I mean, even worse, I'm from Appenzell, which is this really rural farmers part of Switzerland. Only a few people live there. But is it in the interest of our customer to do Swiss-made? Which is a brutal question, because everybody says, yeah, but if you don't do Swiss-made, you can't sell. But Swiss-made is really what people want. Yeah, I know that. Or at least I heard that, but I'm not so sure. Because the same product would be a lot more expensive, right? I mean, a lot, at least 30 to 40%, depending on what movement you're using. So the value, or the most expensive part of our watch is not the movement. At that price point, it's the case, it's the dial. And I think we have a rather complex dial. If you think about 5 different layers, different finishings, 11 applications. So it's quite complex, but we want this visually that you really have something that you can enjoy, rather than have to turn out around the watch and have something you might not use. And that was our idea. So all these parameters we established, and then it was Arnaud Duval, our designer, our chief creative, who came with many different suggestions. But it started with this shape from the beginning, on the cushion shape.
Yeah, it's always been the same, and it's always been Seven Friday. And you mentioned, like, it's a difference between, to you, how do you explain a brand that is based on a whole holistic idea of a brand, and a brand that's just basically product in your own?
I mean, honestly, first maybe I have to make a disclaimer that I'm not a marketing specialist, because I never studied, never read a book about it.
You did very well, I guess.
I'm just saying. But I think for me, branding is when the perception and the value of the brand is more than the accumulation of its products. So there's an emotional value behind. There's something which connects you to the brand, and I think that was for us always important. And on one side, the second thing, we all, or now one partner is not in the company anymore, but Arno and myself, we both admire these timeless designs. You look at the 911, you can hate it, you can love it. Most people have to like it somehow. And you look since the beginning, at least from the 911, the 356, maybe that's a bit, but still, there is a recognition, and you see a clear evolution of one design, which is so iconic. And that is something we adhere a bit to. We don't need to do all kind of shapes and possibilities and functions that are in fashion, which sometimes, yeah, would be nice. Maybe we could sell a bit more, but I feel very strongly that the design language and the coherence of the collection, the recognition of the product, contributes a big part as well to the brand equity.
That's why, if I look, when was the first watch you introduced? What year?
2012.
2012.
The first sold was in July 2012. The first time I showed the prototype in Basel, 2012. And obviously I knew a bit people from the industry, and the comments were not so nice.
Okay. What were the comments like?
Well, that time I knew at that time the CEO for the Piquevel, from Mondain, and a couple other brands. And I think the nicest comment from brand principals was, good thing I don't have to sell that. That was the nicest. And I thought, maybe I'm on track. Because I really, at that time, I was even more arrogant than today. I really thought this industry is so not innovative. It's so backwards somehow. There's everything. It's just not everything new. No, it's not for us. Remember Instagram, right?
2 years ago they got into
Yeah,
Instagram.
exactly.
Look, if you look at the bigger brands, Patek is a few years ago.
Well, I understand a Patek right because they don't have to. I mean, they can open an account.
I disagree with that, honestly.
Yeah?
I don't think there's a company that does it. Coca-Cola still spend billions on advertisement. You cannot tell me a family business can't invest in a small account with Instagram.
They can,
but they
don't have to. Today, I think, actually...
I think, but they still lost a lot of...
You think they lost?
No, I think, they have of course, I'm not in a position to judge Patek, but I mean, I think, they lost the early, like, if you look at Patek, like the age group. So you get old as a retailer, your clients get older with you, like they get older, right? And they don't attract anymore in the 20s. Like in our people, in our region, let's say, a lot of people want to get into watches and they look at Patek as a huge opportunity. I cannot start with a Patek with a gold, and they lost completely that. I think they're still selling.
Did they ever have
a big?
Did they ever have the young ones?
Do they have to?
Did they ever have the young ones?
They never, but I think they should. They should have a full,
I think it's a bit for me a bit like Hermes if you want. it's like it's just not young people's. But maybe you're right, and I'm very much fan of including the young ones because we discussed just before that. I believe the trendsetters are the young ones, the 20s, especially with the whole social media power. That today my son tells me where I should go clothes shopping. Where in my generation, I would look, my dad goes here and there, I go there too. So it's kind of a reversal of trends, right?
Yeah. But I know, but it's a deeper maybe discussion. But what was your first sale to who? You remember the customer? You remember the client? Or?
Yeah, my dad. A first time, full retail.
Not even a family discount. Huh?
No, he paid me full retail. They even worked, they even helped me at the beginning. So I showed it to people. So there was one side, but journalists, distributors, retailers immediately were very positive. They didn't know it was not Swiss made, but they immediately, the estimation was retail price between $3,000 and $12,000, the estimation.
Okay.
And we started at 800. So that was cool because we wanted this perceived value. And then the first products I had available, I was sitting in the office and great. Nobody knows. And it was literally a friend of mine told me, we did Facebook, and then a friend of mine, you should try Instagram. So, okay, what is Instagram? Downloaded it. I'm personally not into social media. I have an account now because otherwise I can't monitor, but I didn't do anything other than LinkedIn, I think. I didn't have Facebook before. And so we did all that, and you just try out. And it was the first watches were literally some friends here and there. It was really every month you're like, oh, okay, I need to sell some, and I had a business plan. And if I don't hit this minimum number, then I go back looking for a job. And then suddenly, I think it was in October, it really took off. It was Philippines and the US.
Based on your own activities?
Based on social media.
Like social media.
Fancy. I think there was this application in the US, Fancy. Remember that? I don't know whether it's still exists.
They like curate products and such?
Yeah, and you can buy their stuff. And I don't know whether it's still around. So anyway, they found us on social media. They saw the novelty, the character.
Spotlight on, okay, so this is a cool watch, and they would just do an article or something like that?
No, it was just us posting. Nobody really picked up. There was one article. I think the first article was written by Anish Bhatt from Watch Anish, on a blog to watch at that time was the name, right? Blog to read, blog to watch. So he wrote the first review, I think, of a Seven Friday in July or something. I met him then in August. We became his first customer. So after 2 months of existence, we decided to work together. So he helped, obviously, spreading the word because he's really, I don't know exactly what he's doing now, but he was extremely innovative.
In the beginning, he was the only guy that's talk about watches, not my granddad.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and he was even, when he came to Basel, he dressed in a way you had to see him. He was
skinny jeans. And
yeah. He did branding on all different levels. But yeah, and then it just took off. I mean, it was the first year location we sold out in January, the last watch. Then I started traveling because I had no more watches, and only May again. And I think at the end of 2013, we had 50 countries.
2000, you said 15?
So 12 we started, right?
And then
July
in
12.
3 years, you had 50 countries.
So end of 2013, we had 50 countries.
You remember
Okay.
production numbers? Like
Yeah, sure.
first year?
No, the first year consolidated, so it's like 1.5 or 1 year, 5 months, whatever, was 11,000 watches.
11,000 watches, okay.
And then it went to 24. So that was just really crazy. But it allowed us also to create some reserves, to do really quality and try to improve the way we're doing things. We didn't even have a display at the beginning.
Slowly.
Just 3 watches. Oh yeah, the funny thing was, talking about crazy watch industry, the Filipinos came after 6 months maybe, said, we need to open a boutique. I said, but with 3 watches? I mean, the same watch, 3 different finishings, right? So the P1, P2, P3, the same features, everything, but PVD, non-PVD, brushed, whatever. And I said, come on, let's slow down. I mean, it's all good, but I said, no, you don't understand. This is the Philippines. We need to open boutique. I said, okay. Open the boutique. So we did the design, the whole how the design team. We did the boutique, installed it. We did a second one in the Philippines, and then I realized I don't like boutiques.
You don't like
No.
boutiques. Why?
Because I think they're boring mostly. If they would have a bar counter with a coffee machine and something I can wait for my wife, that would be much better.
And
So-
that's how it became a lifestyle, and then you got into clothes.
Yeah, it was
coffee corners and
It was always supposed, Seven Friday to be an attitude really more than just a brand. So an attitude, a lifestyle, a brand, a product. But no, I was just at that time, I said, okay, we don't do boutiques. And sometimes you just have to say out loud, otherwise you're going to do it again.
But did it do well? Did it make a difference that they had a boutique?
Yeah, no,
versus-
it helped, but it was just the concept of boutiques. Like in Zurich Bahnhofstrasse, it's full of boutiques. I don't go there. I go parallel streets where you have more multi-brand, where you have a more curated collection rather than a branded collection sometimes.
Interesting. Because
Yeah.
now the whole direction is just
I know, it's
boutiques.
getting
They
so
want
boring. The
boutiques,
whole world looks
AP
the same.
houses and yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, it's this whole integration. But normally it changes again sometimes, right? It's always in certain circles, I believe. But and then Indonesia came and said, "Oh, great idea." I wasn't even sure exactly because we do Seven Friday Space, and I wasn't really completely sure what that is. Other than it's a place you can hang out, a bit like here. You can have a coffee, you meet friends, and then Indonesia came and said, "Well, look, my brother's a chef. Let's open a restaurant." So in 2016, we opened the Seven Friday restaurant in Jakarta. And from then, we expanded more space concept like in Zurich as well, where it's normally bar, counter, lunch, you have food. In the evening, we did concerts, stand-up comedy, all kind of things.
So it goes back to the brand, an attitude, friends, community. It's not just a watch that I tell you the specs is this size, this movement is.
Yeah, because I feel
interesting.
we can do all that, but I find a lot of the biggest part of the population, they're not watch nerds. So for them, if anything, a watch is an accessory, like a piece of jewelry can be. But it can be a bit a turn-off if you have to have a PhD to be able to go into the shop to buy a product.
I get it, yeah.
So we try to make it really accessible and fun as well. So you like it, you don't. It's for me like art. Some people, they are really afraid to go to galleries because they talk about what the inspiration, I don't know. But you can also go in and just say, I like it or I don't like it. It can be as simple as that.
How does it make you feel?
Yeah.
But when did you feel that you like a question about these countries, which was very interesting to me, is that why do you think that certain countries just pick up certain brands? Like, is it because the retailers are great? or like, because I know a few countries, like if you go to Russia, Blampa was huge. It's a different level. Prigge, and maybe in Asia, Japan would have, I don't know, independent. Philippe Dufour, actually, one of the reasons that he was big is because of Japan. Yeah. But why in Jakarta? Why was it big? And why was it big in Kuwait? It was huge in Kuwait. Like,
it was never the biggest here, actually.
Where was the biggest?
China. They went to the insane.
Yeah, but percentage-wise,
even percentage-wise,
population, that's different.
It's really Asia. Asia was.
Why do you think that Asia?
Okay, I think one thing is it's a combination. Obviously, in Indonesia, it's the partner as well, or strongly the partner. I think we maybe forgot a bit in this whole digital age how important the human contact is and how important the partner to bridge from local culture to international brand. And I think that's very important. On the other hand, yes, if there's obviously a certain global desirability, which you didn't have like 20 years ago, it was very difficult. So it wasn't only the local partner, right? So when Julius Nader in Eastern Europe was strong, it was predominantly the local partners. When in Japan, it was somebody in Japan introduced that to the culture and had the connection to the right people, like FP Schorn as well. I think when I was in Japan, they had a boutique in Montesando. Actually, a really cool boutique. And so I think, yes, the people on the ground, I think, is probably the most important thing. That doesn't mean in growingly that the brand has to do a good job, but it's very difficult because social media is what print used to be. Yeah. Pre-COVID, it was much easier to get visibility than now, right?
Pre-COVID? You mean online or in general?
Online. No, online. Yeah,
online,
because 2020, every last brand finally decided that online is part of the strategy.
Nowadays, if you want to talk about nowadays, is that there's every other day, because I follow every single news, we have RSCs, everything. Every other day there's a new micro brand.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And back in 2012 and 2010,
it was
nobody.
No.
It was there were a few crazy independents, John, Harry Winston doing things, and Max, DeBetone, or work maybe.
But more on the high end, huh?
Very high end. Very high end. And who's... Yeah, iCupod, because we always like one
iCupod,
of the...
Yeah,
you remember the iCupod? That was the first year you went to.
No, they were, but it was always the Swiss, and it was the price point. That's why there was a certain vacuum. Now that is open. Now many brands come in. Yeah. Or as you said, or products or brands or whatever you want to qualify. But yeah, daily, weekly, I lost the overview. But for us, it was always, yes, we had this chance and we thought maybe there is a vacuum where we can go in, and maybe that's accepted. It allows us to go global very quick. We always knew that this insane trend we had at the beginning, I mean, it was really not normal. We have to be very careful with that, because that's not, it can't continue constantly like that. I don't know a single brand in the world that ever had that for long term, like for 50 years, for 20 years, for 10. So we use that to prepare and to go for the long term, to really establish the brand and not just ride a trend, and not just to be a niche brand. Nothing wrong with niche brand. We want to be niche. We want to be, we don't need to be the volume brand. We don't need to be everywhere. So then was the shift to focus really on quality, also quality partners, distribution, having close relations, and really work on that. But
what was the most difficult or the most challenging building the brand?
Finding the right people.
Partners?
No, the in-house. Partners as well. It's because in a country, the most critical point for me to be successful in a country is finding the right partner. But when we had such a growth, I mean, first I was alone. So I did the quality check. I shipped. I did the invoices, and that after I managed companies, had the secretaries, and suddenly you're. And on the weekends, actually, I took the watches home because I didn't have a security system.
At the office?
Yeah. I packed them in my car and drove them home. And then, I found some people. We were 2, we were 3 people, and suddenly things really, they took off like crazy. And one of the key employees got sick, and I had to find people. And the problem is with such a exponential growth is to find or keep the quality of the team and the structure to support that growth. That I found the most difficult thing.
Nice. Design-wise and such, you just the same. You said your partners.
We can, in retrospect, I mean, anyway, it's easy. I can blame Arno. He's the one
designing.
No, we could have done. I think we lost a bit time. We did a bit too long variations of the same. Very frankly, when I look at our collection, so yes, we did the V series, the Q series, which was a bit a different shape, but predominantly was the P and the M series in variations, different material. We did the wood, we did Korean, we did paper animation, we did all those things, which was cool. But I think we lost a bit time for internal reasons to introduce an evolution or an additional collection that is still very clearly recognizable, which for me is now very much the ME and the PE, which is more aerodynamic. It's not much smaller really, but because of design angles, it feels a lot more ergonomic and a lot more...
I see it in your hand, yeah.
Yeah, easier to wear.
And so, do you personally, where do you want to see Seven Friday in the future?
Where I want to see? I want us to hopefully stay true to our price point, keeping creative, really constantly challenging, because that's the thing a bit for me. And I say that very a lot, it's not completely true, not so black and white. To be creative and stick to a price point constantly, it's very challenging. If the price doesn't matter, it's easy to do a lot of things. We want to extend the quality of the representation in different parts of the world. And I'm talking predominantly about Asia, Middle East, and North America. And I want to keep Seven Friday flourishing, and we don't need much growth. That's a beauty, because we are a small company, we are a small team. Most of our infrastructures are automized, like the whole ordering system, the whole logistics. It's all, we need 20% of a person to do sales administration. So we set it up very early. That's maybe my past link to the IT. So yeah, for me, it's really, I want Seven Friday to be here forever. And
we won't see like a round watch from Seven Friday, a classical chrono, maybe a Calatrava inspired something. So do you see that? Do you want to do that? Like, another thing is like there's a brand with like full collection, that you see, okay, this is classical, this is ladies, this is weekends only, this is, and what's the reason I'm asking this is that what I see now in the region or in the industry now, everyone is going back to classical watches. The best brand is selling now at the moment we're talking about is Denison, for example, which is basically a watch inspired by the 70s in Piaget, and this very slim manual one. Now it's quartz, but the idea, very fluid case, very simple, time only. And a lot of brands are switching back there. Yet you started with the hype is that it's, as you said very nicely, it's a complicated way of displaying time. It's not a complication per se, but
it's at least not
would
what
we
call
see
it.
something?
Okay, first of all, I wouldn't just exclude anything. I wouldn't exclude that we're ever going to do around the triangle, whatever other shape there might be. But it has to be the Seven Friday language. That's a challenge. So if we would do a round watch, it needs to be recognizable as a Seven Friday. Because one thing we have, and I think I consider that luck, some consider that a curse, that we got recognized for a shape, and people recognize a Seven Friday from a distance.
100%.
And that's very rare.
That's very difficult to achieve.
And I think now, I don't know, but in the past I felt like Audemars Piguet, they always found it a bit a curse and a blessing at the same time, because they always tried to different collection to get them to grow, but it was always this royal oak which was so over dominant, right? But yeah, for us, no, I think that's good. And I do not exclude shape, complication. The only thing is, whatever we do, and that's really the filter we have to adhere to, is the philosophy we're standing for. And it's a lifestyle as well, as I mentioned. We want to have fun with what we're having. We don't want to take ourselves always too serious, because that's really tiring. And yeah, we want to experiment. We looked into complication different. We constantly look. We constantly research. We constantly research different shapes. We have prototypes in the office. Maybe one day we open a book with all the prototypes we never launched, or the failures of, it looks good on paper and then in reality, oops. So yeah, I can't tell you that. I can only say as a package where I see where I would like. And I would like even more that people associate with Seven Friday beyond the product. Like, we had events also here in Kuwait with people. Yeah, I had people calling from the US at the beginning when I was alone in the office. They call me and I pick up and say, yeah, by the way, I am Seven Friday. So they were telling, yeah, but they got the message. So what he tells me is that that's how I live. Because normally the first people picking up on the brand were artists and designers.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Because they have this certain sensibility, right, to understand what we want to express, and then the rest hopefully follows.
Well, okay, very, very well said. And I want to say something that I asked. You mentioned Max Boozer from MBNF. And Max, if you know the history, or if you know him personally, I'm not sure, is that he said in the beginning of MBNF, I would never design a round watch. Okay. Because I love the brand. I've been following him forever. Yeah. And in an interview we did with him, we did like 4 or 5 interviews with him. And he said, like, never say never.
Yep.
Because he did a round watch that's very successful. He's doing a ladies watch that's round, it's very successful.
I think we learn as we go a bit. At the beginning, you need to exclude certain things, otherwise you get sidetracked. So you need a certain focus, I guess.
Yeah, then you get bigger, you can challenge, you can...
Yeah, and the situation change, the circumstances change a bit. But that's why maybe at one stage I say, well, never say never. It's a circumstance. It's not a black and white box, right? No, I met him in Schnitzel Dinner 2013 in Basel at the exhibition.
13.
Yeah, there was, I think, Monochrome or somewhere. Organized yearly the Schnitzel Dinner, so I was suddenly invited.
Okay.
And
that's a very early. He's 25 years. When did he stop? I forgot.
He was. I think it's 25 years. Yeah.
He's celebrating 25 years now.
I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
But there were a lot of people. Speaker Marine was there. So everybody was super friendly. I mean, that was really nice to see, because there was all the independent smaller. Very creative brands invited me there. Everybody was super friendly, and that's how I got to know Max. And I remember Peter Speaker Marine came to me and was like, "Are you the Seven Friday guy?" Yeah. I hate you. I said, "What? I don't even know you." It's like, "No, you just do everything right." So it was a huge compliment. Obviously, now it doesn't mean we do everything right, and it's just like, yeah.
You got very interesting. So for you, on a personal note, conclude the interview with this question: is like, what brands do you admire when it comes to like small, micro, independent brands that you respect and you think they did it well in the past 20, 25 years?
I had this discussion on this trip already 2 times. Once in Bahrain, once in Karachi. I can't say. I think, first of all, and that's a problem maybe from being in industry, I don't have a favorite brand per se. I have some really favorite products, some products I really think they just got it right somehow. But admire for the story. I do like, I'm impressed by what Richard Mille built.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
Right? And for me, it was a bit because I remember when Audemars Piguet came out with the concept watch. I really liked this watch because it was finally something cool. Expensive, but cool. And it was bold, and it was something, I found it a bit younger. Right? And for me, then, what Richard Mille did, and hopefully I'm not insulting, it's my opinion, is that he commercialized, to a certain extent for certain people, commercialized this concept approach to the watch. Right, and I found that very, very impressive. Otherwise, Daniel Wellington.
Daniel Wellington?
Oh, yeah. But they started at a similar time as us, and it's crazy how now I don't know how they're doing.
But they're very, I think they're very fashion driven, right? I mean,
Well, actually, if you think about the trend today of smaller watches, simple dial, minute, second date, and hit behind a little bit skeletonized or not movement, depending on the price point you want to pay. That's the trend now, right?
Yeah.
So you get every day a new brand coming with that idea. But the first one, picking up classic watch and make it accessible, that was Daniel Wellington. Simple gold case, hour, minute, second, was quartz and whatever, on a strap, and it became popular to wear a classic watch because it became a kind of an accessory, fashion accessory.
Very interesting.
So for me, no, I thought, damn, genius. So maybe a bit I had the Speaker Marine effect there. I said, shit, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
No, that's why I also, West End, yeah. So I admire, it doesn't have to be my philosophy or my strategy, but I admire people who have something and pull it through, also against a certain trend particular, and are really successful with it, and especially on a sustainable way, because what is much easier to sell a lot of watches quickly and then stop and do something else. But really build it into a lasting brand, that's really the tough thing, because you also have to respend the money you're making.
100% you have to do it, yeah.
What else is there? There's so many brands.
There are so many brands, yeah.
What else would there
But
be?
what I like is this independent side, which is the more creative, more challenging.
So, yeah. But what is the brand? What would you... Oh, you can't pick one, right?
No, I can. I said MBNF.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
MBNF
I do
is cool.
respect MBNF.
Urwerk.
Is yeah, I love Urwerk.
Yeah. But
they became a product brand.
I think they always were a bit, right?
Yeah.
But it's in this niche, yeah. But for me, MBNF to a certain extent, a bit. Okay, with the gallery, there he really built a bridge.
MBNF, every single horology machine is different.
No, that's what I mean. As in, for the
so I mean, Urwerk it's a satellite.
Yeah, you're right.
Display, and then they did the retrograde, and then they went back to the satellite. And they did the hands. A year ago, they did one with like regular hands instead of a satellite.
Okay.
They did. It wasn't that successful, because if you don't know about it, they didn't do it well. I guess.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean,
there's a lot of brands. Yeah.
But yeah, no, MBNF for sure. And I also like this gallery concept they're doing, where they really try to explain more philosophy and an environment rather than just only the product, which I think is very courageous. And
they did what Seven Friday did.
To a certain extent, yeah. Actually, one of the first retailers in Switzerland was MBNF Gallery in Geneva.
Oh, for Seven Friday?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that was fun.
Because I know Max appreciates these. He loves iCupods. He loves Seven Friday. He mentions Seven Friday once. And so, yeah.
No, he really, that was for us also support. He sold extremely well there in the store because, we didn't have much representation in this region. So a lot of people from Middle East, they passed by Geneva. And then, that worked. That worked well. But product. What's your favorite product?
My favorite product?
Watch product. A contemporary, not vintage.
Besides Denison. Because you change. That's the thing, is like, as a watch guy, I remember 7 years ago was my dream to get an Urwerk. And then it became an LM1, for example. LM1 from... sorry, not LM1. Yeah, a legacy machine from MBNF, the simple one. And I just keep changing, and I really appreciate Richard Mille now. I feel he did the best, like for the period that he started the company to what he is right now. It's amazing.
That's what for me. It's a business case as well. It's
amazing,
incredible.
And of course, the usual suspects, Nautilus, Royal Oak is always.
Yeah, the Royal Nautilus, I never really. No, not so much. I don't understand. Really.
You didn't buy Royal Oaks during your.
I bought one actually.
Of course, you should have.
The Alinghi, and now my son is wearing it. Because I only wear Seven Friday. But no, the Royal Oak is obviously. I honestly, and it was probably not so popular. I think the Rolex is one of the most balanced watch. Besides, it's probably the best quality you get for the price. I think in terms of design, it's really well balanced.
I think it's the perfect design.
Yeah,
I think
that's what I mean.
When it comes to the bracelets, everything about it is just.
And that's for me also a bit the Royal Oak. Recently, I really like the Octissimo from Bulgari.
Octofinissimo from Bulgari, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really nice.
It is very cool, yeah.
So that's why I think there's a lot of really, and what I admire when people bring out the design and they kind of institutionalize it. There's a lot of singular crazy products out there which you like, you don't like, but really make it a collection and make it sustainable. I find it extremely impressive. Takes a lot of time.
It's a lot of time. It's
Well
very
done.
difficult.
Yeah.
Change. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to Kuwait, first of all. I know this is not your first time. And we
No,
hope
but
to
I have to
see
come more often, I know.
often, yeah.
Yep.
It's Friday, inshallah. And thank you very much. Hope it was a quick and easy interview for you.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun. I could go for talking about watches. Actually, I'm always saying I'm not a watch fanatic, but then I talk for hours about watches. There's something wrong.
In the
Huh?
industry.
I have to
You're
reassess
Switzerland in the industry. There's no...
Thank you so much
no
for
way,
having
no.
me.
Thanks to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.